I am Susanna Temko. I am 24. I live in London. I'm a campaign specialist, and I am a intersex woman. When I was a baby, and things were supposed to develop either into male or female, sort of testes or ovaries, the in-between is called gonads, not balls, gonads. I have something called Fraser syndrome. So I have XY chromosomes, which are typically male, and I have gonadal dysgenesis, which means that the parts of me that were supposed to turn into testes or ovaries stayed gonads. When I was 15, I got really drunk at a party and I fell over. And I fell very funnily, and I found, in falling, I found a tumor. And that tumor turned out to be stage 4, what we thought was ovarian cancer. So for my GCSE year, I basically spent all of it. I spent all of it in chemotherapy and surgeries and just in London, and it was rough, and then kind of got to the end of it, and I just turned 16, and I was told, they asked me, do you want to know why you got cancer? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to know, because it's why the fuck did a 15-year-old get ovarian cancer? And they sat me down and they sort of said, they basically gave me a biology lesson, and it was a very nice woman I was sitting opposite, and she said, boys have typically XY chromosomes, girls typically have XX chromosomes, and you have XY chromosomes, and when you were in your mummy's tummy, I don't know why they said that, because I was 15, I understand, hadn't had sex, but got the gist. And they, and she basically said, and the things that were gonads, which were supposed to become ovaries or testes, they didn't become either. And in some cases, they can become cancerous. And in your case, unluckily, in your rare case, they became cancerous, and that's why you get cancer. And it was so funny, because I just was like, thanks for the biology lesson, that was very interesting. And then I left the room, and I was like, I left the hospital, and I was in the middle of London, and I just started going, oh fuck, oh my god, she was talking about me. And then I just started having this panic attack in the middle of London, and I was with my mum, and I just was like, oh my god, they're talking about me, that was me, oh my god. And just a million questions just started running through my mind. It's just non-stop, just like, what does this mean? What does it mean? Like, who am I? Am I a girl? And I just didn't process at all what had happened. And I found out that they told me during that meeting as well that I would never have children, and that just kind of went right over my head. I was like, God, I don't know what's gonna happen. And I just looked at my mum. I was like, did you know? And she said, yeah, we've known since just when you got diagnosed. And I understood it. They weren't sure if I was gonna live. So, they thought that was a lot to put on a 15-year-old. Fair enough. When I was 18, I went between university. I went to Tanzania, and I got malaria, which was super fun for my mum to find out. And I had to call the insurance doctor, and I gave him my medical history. And then when we got to me being intersex, he stopped me and he said, you've given me an incorrect medical history, you're a boy. And it doesn't matter what anyone else tells you, you're a boy. You have XY chromosomes, you're a boy. And just kept yelling, you're a boy, down the phone. Kept asking me whether my breasts had developed, whether I was sexually active, whether, joked about the fact that I couldn't have kids. All the supportive parents in the world and supportive friends that I'm lucky to have, everyone just kind of kept saying, he's a prick. And that's not true. And it doesn't matter what he says, he doesn't know. And I really wanted to believe that, but then it just planted this seed of doubt, this seed of shame, of, really reinforcing to keep it secret. And it was, I've always been someone who dreams, and I've always been like, I'll be a politician, I'll be an architect, I'll be, and it was like a switch flipped, and I just stopped daydreaming. I just couldn't, I couldn't daydream anymore. I couldn't see a future. I didn't see how I was ever going to get married. Couldn't see how I'd ever be happy. And I began to punish myself. I just thought, well, I'm not a proper woman, and I'll never be a proper woman, so I've got to make myself look as much of a proper woman as I can. I developed anorexia pretty badly, and depression, and I think I just got it in my head that I was, everything was wrong with me. I just thought everything was wrong, and everything about me was shameful and awful, and there was nothing out there to tell me that I wasn't. And it was only 5 years ago, and it got really, really bad and really dark, and it does for a lot of people, and it just does not have to be like that. It just shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. And I would just, I got it in my head that I was a mistake, and God gave, at the worst point, I thought, God, I was a mistake, and God gave me cancer to get rid of me because I'm wrong. And I don't even, I'm not even deeply religious. It made no sense. And, one day after punishing myself for 9 years, my mum found this article, and it was of these beautiful women with intersex bodies, and I just looked at them, and it held up, looking at other intersex people, making intersex people visible is amazing, because you don't feel alone anymore. And I just realized there's a lot wrong with me. Intersex is not one of those things. I started writing a blog 2 years ago called XYSuZ, and I wanted to write about illness, and I wanted to be really honest, and I wanted someone to read it to feel less alone and less ashamed of anything that had happened to them, or of who they thought they were. And then I realized I'd have to talk about intersex if I really wanted to do that. And I posted this long letter basically to everyone saying, I'm intersex, this is what it is, I'm not ashamed of it, there's nothing wrong with it, it's beautiful, it's part of human variation, nature loves diversity, and it's just part of that, and there's nothing wrong with being who you are, and there's nothing wrong with your body. Everybody is different, and every body is beautiful. People are born with sex characteristics, so that's genitals, gonads, chromosomes, patterns that don't fit with the typical binary notions of male and female. Intersex is about biological sex, which is distinct from your gender. Your sex, as we know, doesn't define your gender in a way that it also doesn't define your sexuality or the kind of norms that we see in society. So someone who is intersex, like someone who doesn't have intersex traits, can identify as male and female, and many do, and some reject the ideas of male and female and do identify as intersex, or reject normative ideas about gender. And they can be intersex people, like non-intersex people, can be attracted to a wide range of genders, both, none, But the distinction is that it's about biological sex characteristics rather than sexuality or gender. So, Google it. The most conservative number is 1 in 2,000, but it's more generally accepted that it's 1 in 1,000. It can be as common as red hair or twins. There are a lot of human rights issues for intersex people that need to be addressed and are being addressed by places like Intersex UK and Interact Youth in the States and AIC Advocates for Informed Choice, and it's great. Currently, the human rights issue that is at the forefront is surgery, medically unnecessary surgery on primarily intersex children and babies. The UN has recently shown that it's torture and it violates people's right to bodily integrity, and that's people operating on you and assigning a gender to you without your consent. There's a lot of evidence that shows it irreversibly, physically and psychologically harms the child. It's done only to conform to ideas of what sex should look like, what male and female should look like. And frankly, it's garbage. No one has ever thanked a surgeon for these surgeries. They tell people that their bodies are wrong and their bodies are shameful, and they're not, and there's nothing to fix. Some intersex children do need medically necessary surgery at birth, and no one's against that, but scalpels don't sculpt gender, they just sever futures. The thing that needs to change is seeing people as different or other, and to realize that at the base we're all the same. And we need to grow up in a society that has equality and that doesn't shame people and that doesn't make people ashamed of themselves. From here on out, I get to work with Intersex UK, with people like Holly Greenberry and Dawn Vargo, who've already made so many strides in advancing intersex human rights. When people hear about intersex, usually the reaction is that they can't believe they've never heard about it before. And we're talking about doctors too, we're talking about medical students who've never heard of it. And it's not because we're rare, it's because we're invisible. And that has to change. We're going to be working by talking to medical schools, and to talking to schools, and talking to Parliament, and talking to people who can change. And also, it's so important that intersex people with intersex bodies, be visible. XYSuZ is for intersex people and non-intersex people to come and either learn about intersex, to see it from a different perspective, to touch on issues that they never had. It's accessible, it's friendly, and in all manners it's open. There's a blog about intersex issues and my own personal stories, so I'll touch on what I've experienced. Where I don't have experience, I will ask other people to lend theirs. There's photos, there's videos, there's interviews, there's resources for people to learn about how to talk about intersex, what the current human rights situation is, what to do, what you can do as an ally, what you can do as an intersex person, and so much more. On a personal level, I just really like XYSuZ. I never thought I'd put my typically male chromosomes next to my name, and now I really like the sound of it, so it's cool. Primarily, I just want intersex people who come to XYSuZ to know they're not alone, that there's lots of people out here, I'm just one of them, and that there is absolutely nothing shameful about their body. That they're beautiful, they're lovable, they're worthy, they deserve everything that they get, positive, that they deserve everything in life, and that there are people who've been through the same thing, and being yourself authentically is enough. I'd wanted to tell intersex people that even though it's really hard sometimes to see a future, and to see where things can go, and to see what you can be, to see marriage, to see successful jobs, that you can have that and you will have that, and it does get better. It's allowed to be hard, it's allowed to be really tough, but that's what we're here for. And you can be anything you want to be. Even though it's still hard, living openly, visibly, as an intersex woman is possible, and it's the most wonderful, liberating thing to live authentically, and that's enough and that's okay. Being intersex is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It's a beautiful, normal variation in humans. I'm glad that I'm an intersex woman. I wouldn't change my body.